And here we go. Welcome to another segment of Into Interviews a Friend. That's what I've officially named this vodcast on YouTube. Thank you for the 5 of you that are watching in the future or in the past. I have a friend with me, um, Pastor Reverend Robert Liu. Do you want to give any introduction about who you are and what you do, or anything else about your life?
Yeah, man. First off, not a pastor or a reverend. Man, I know Insu from way back.
Well, I mean,
I
like, like,
was
like, if you worked at a white church, they would call you pastor, right?
probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm a minister,
Gotcha.
youth minister at Katy Christian Community Church. Been
Oh,
partnering
they
with
ch- they
with.
changed it to from Chinese to community.
They haven't been. I don't know if they've ever been Chinese.
Oh, they
So
they're
it's been
always
one
been
of those
community church.
things.
Okay, sorry.
I
Okay.
think so. Even though, yes, we are a Chinese church. But yeah, I've been partnering with Insu ever since he was over at the Houston network of churches. I met him early on. I was like, who is this guy? But I was an intern over there at a sister church, and so got to spend a lot of time with him and kept up with all these throughout all these years. And so I'm finally kind of on the same level as Insu now. So it's good to get to talk ministry with him and always keep up with him and see how things are going.
Yeah, and Rob's been a really good quarantine buddy. I don't know what happened in the quarantine, but we've been chatting a lot. And for whatever reason, one of the topics that came up, whether or not students are interested in it or not, is the upcoming election. Like, it is
Mm.
the elephant in the room. So I guess we're gonna do some kind of dialogue on it. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what thoughts you were hoping to have, but I'm just willing to free for all.
Yeah, man. I think it's an important topic. Like you said, it's the elephant in the room. Like everyone is thinking about it. Maybe not youth, but I do think that youth need to have some sort of idea of how they're going to think through this because parents are definitely thinking about it. And if you are just kind of going through life with blinders on and you're going, well, I'm just not going to pay attention to that. Um, I don't think that's a very healthy way of living. You got to start thinking about really tough topics even early on.
You know, it's tricky because, like, it is one of those things. You know, the two things you don't talk about, right? Like, our politics and religion.
Yeah.
But I would say, like, politics is higher than religion, because even with my Christian friends, like, anytime I talk about politics with them, it's, it's like talking about their something bad about their mom, right? Like, nobody wants to
Mhm.
hear it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's so I've never felt comfortable, like, expressing any opinions or even asking my friends about it. Because you don't know what they're gonna say, and you don't want to break their trust.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know. What are some things that you would suggest to us? I know you said this was a topic you wanted to talk about with
Yeah.
some of your leaders. So what were some of those thoughts you were wanting to air out?
Yeah, man. There's a couple things, kind of really big topics that I've been thinking about a lot. I was talking to Insu before this saying, I don't even necessarily, when we're talking about politics, I don't really want to get into, policy specific stuff of like, hey, look, tax reform and that kind of stuff, but rather really just big topics of going like, hey, if I'm a Christian, if I'm a believer, what should my political involvement be? What is my political responsibility? And I think it's really interesting that we have um, kind of these vastly different perspectives, even amongst evangelicals. Where I just recently heard from one of my friends today that some people are like flying banners that say like Jesus 2020, and they're saying like, hey, look, like uh, forget the candidates this year, like Jesus is king. And look, I get the sentiment, like I agree theologically. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, at the heart of it. If I'm trying to be really charitable, I'm like, yeah, like absolutely, we can't lose sight of that. But at the same time, I think that, on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have people going, look, as a Christian, it is your duty to vote, to enact social change via political means. And so I think that that's just a really kind of tough question to juggle because, again, if you're a youth or even a college adult, right, and you're hearing both of these sides, for me as a kind of moderate political person, I'm like, yeah, dude, I think that we absolutely have to put our trust in Jesus as the ultimate king, the one who we are hoping will come back to reform the world into the state that it will be in, right? And not say like, hey, look, this political party or this political person is going to be the one who comes and solves our problems, right? Like I completely agree with that. And then on the opposite end, I'm like, yeah, but if you and me as American citizens, believers in Jesus Christ, have these means of enacting change, you know, hopefully we can agree certain things are good changes, right? Of saying, hey, look, we want to help the widow. We want to, help those that are impoverished. And I know that a lot of these things get kind of gray area stuff, but if we have the ability to do good in the world through political means, should we, right? Is that our quote unquote biblical responsibility? Do you have any thoughts on that, Insu?
Um, yeah, and as I guess there's a lot there. I think as you were saying that, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe this is kind of a tangent, but like I guess related to that, like as you were saying some of those things, I was thinking about like how it's easy for us to demonize the other party, right? And I'm just like
Yeah.
thinking like I don't know like how not to do it. So in Denver, there's a few guys that are running right for Senate or
Mm-hmm.
something, and one of these guys' name is Hickenlooper, right? And then I'd always hear these like weird Hickenlooper attack ads. They're like John Hickenlooper. He punched a baby when he was 15 years old, or like John Hickenlooper litters every day. John Hickenlooper steals toys from kittens, and like,
Mm.
and whatever, right? But it's like, so I'm not answering your question, but like, so forgive me, but what do you think? What do you think about like, how do we not demonize people's views who are different from us?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that goes into kind of just a place that America's been headed for a long time, where we've just been increasingly polarized of like, this side is so apart from that side. And if you're on that side, you're the enemy, right? Like you are the person I'm fighting against. And like you said, you demonize. And I think a really kind of dangerous thing that we've started to do in the political realm, at least, is we start to say, I'm like in the moral right, as in like the correct moral place. So let's say that you're a Democrat. You're like, well, look, I'm morally right. And those other people, they're
Yeah,
evil. Look at the things
right.
that they're doing. They are wrong. And I'm right. And then you get conservatives, people on the right, and they're looking at the left and they're going, I'm right. I'm on the side of life. And you guys hate life. You guys are evil, right? And I'm just like, man, that's not a healthy place to be, right? It doesn't, all that does is it furthers the divide. It shuts down conversation completely. And I think to answer your question of like, hey, look, how do we not demonize? One thing that I'm a huge advocate for is just basic empathy of saying, okay, I'm going to put myself in your shoes and say, okay, how can I give the benefit of the doubt to you and say, okay, where are you at? And so I think that a lot of our kind of infighting can be solved by that, because we've had simple, I've heard it from both sides, of leftish people saying like, hey, look, you cannot be a Christian and vote for Donald Trump. I'm like, man, that's harsh. And then you've got people on the right saying you cannot be a Christian and vote for Joe Biden. And
Yeah,
I'm like, man, you are not leaving any room for anybody to say, well, look, I have concerns for both sides, And so as I think about it, and I'm like, okay, well, look, how can I put myself in the shoes of someone who is a conservative? And I go, okay, how are they feeling? What are certain things that for them might be very important?
mm,
For them, yeah, I disagree that you should make things single issue voting things like this is the ultimate, this is the only thing I'm going to vote on. I disagree with that. But at the same time, I can completely, understand those people that say, look, I know that that's not the only issue, but for me, that is a very important issue. And like, I have, I have to vote my conscience. I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong in thinking that's important. For you, that might be the most important thing. And on the other side, hey, look, there's no way I can vote for a guy who does this and this and this. I'm like, hey, I get that. I understand. And while I know that, there are other political issues at stake, look, I'm not going to tell you, hey, look, but this one's more important. Like, don't look at that, ignore that. That's not important, because it's tough to go into, at least in the Christian realm, biblical sources and say, hey, look, the Bible has listed out the rankings of political policies in terms of, the most important things. Because in a lot of places, as far as I know, look, the Bible is not real clear on some of those things. It doesn't have a book of the Bible that lays out how we should vote politically, how we should involve ourselves, that kind of thing. There are hints to it, but a lot of that is up to interpretation.
Yeah, no, that's good. And it's interesting. You said about like the students. I do think it does affect the students. I feel like they're much more aware than I was when I was in high school. But yeah, I don't know. Do you have any encouragements or thoughts for them, like how maybe it doesn't affect them directly if they're not voting? But I feel like some of the questions that I get from my students, they ask a lot about the LGBTQ community. BLM, is big on their hearts. Gen Z, right? The huge social justice peoples, right? So it's always on their mind. But I don't know. Do you have any encouragements for for the next gen?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, like, this generation is as connected as any generation thus far, and they've have so much information available at their fingertips, you know. And so I would always encourage to be educated and to read and to listen, and not only listen to like your side, because I think that that we've heard about the echo chamber and all that kind of stuff. Look, if all you're doing is reading your side and being affirmed and being
Good.
affirmed, and you're like, yeah, everyone I know believes this. That's how you get into the mentality of, look, everyone I know believes this, so whoever doesn't believe that is just wrong,
Yeah,
right? Like, they don't know what they're talking about, because everyone I know agrees with me. And that's how you start to get into that polarization that I was talking about, of saying that's the enemy, right? We are so divided. And so, look, my encouragement is, look for sources not just within your own tribe. That means, if all you do is listen to Fox News, maybe you need to listen to some other things as well. And if you've never listened to Fox News, maybe you should. I'm not saying, look, like, listen to it and believe it as gospel, but I'm saying, hey, look, listen to it with an open mind. Understand that anything you read and listen to has bias, has a slant, and think about these things with your own mind, rather than just kind of taking the spoon feeding. But I would also encourage our youth to really kind of try to understand the other side.
it's really good.
Like you said, we're at a point in our lives where it's so easy to look at the other person as the enemy, and just argue and argue and argue. With my youth group, we after our late night stuff, a lot of times people hang around and they're just debating politics, and I'm like, dude, this is like not real healthy, especially in the body of Christ. You know what I mean? Like, I understand that politics can be divisive, but if we as the body, as the church, are being fragmented in a place where we're just fighting, even amongst ourselves, I'm like, dude, like, we're no different than the rest of the world. And if we are the church of Christ, united by the blood of Christ, identified in him, then we have to be a little different.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. No, these are really excellent thoughts, and I appreciate what you said about unity, which is hard in today's day. But yeah, if we are united by blood of Christ, then we should act like it. Got one more final question as we wrap up. You mentioned bias. Who is your bias? What member of BTS do you like the most, Rob, and why?
I don't understand that question, to be honest. I know who BTS is, but I don't, is that a person? Is bias a person?
No, I don't know. I guess
Oh, you're just
I
saying
think that's
who do I like in BTS the
I think
most?
that's something that they say. Yeah, who's your bias?
All right,
You have
dude.
one?
No, I don't. Unfortunately, I don't listen to K-pop. The K-pop that I've heard, I like. It's catchy, it's exciting, but I don't have the time to keep up with all the crews and stuff like that.
Well, you heard it from Rob. Vote for BTS 2020.